90% of everything you own probably got to you on a ship. We're talking about a colossal, almost invisible industry that literally powers our world, with over 1 million seafarers working out there right now. But what keeps this whole global machine from breaking down? Well, it's not just fancy tech. It's this incredibly complex web of rules and responsibilities that every single person on board has to live by every single day. So let's pull back the curtain and see what it really takes.
And our guide on this trip comes from a pretty unexpected place. This is a sample question bank for seafarers from the Bangladesh Department of Shipping. Now, I know what you're thinking, a quiz, but trust me, this thing is a fantastic window into the hidden world of life at sea. The questions themselves reveal the day-to-day grind, the very real dangers, and the core principles that govern everything.
All right, here's our game plan. We're going to start small with the individual seafarer and their gear. Then we'll zoom out to see how the crew has to operate like a single unit. From there, we'll ramp it up to ship-wide emergencies, then look at the huge impact these ships have on the environment, and finally, we'll land on what might be the single most important factor in all of maritime safety. Think about a ship that might be longer than 3 football fields. You might think safety starts with the captain on the bridge, right? Nope. It starts with one person, right here on the deck, and the choices they make every single minute. And it all comes down to this one idea, PSSR. Personal safety, well, that's pretty self-explanatory. It's about keeping yourself from getting hurt. But the second part, social responsibility, that's where it gets really interesting. It means you're not just looking out for yourself. You're also responsible for the safety of every other person on that ship and for protecting the ocean you're sailing through. At sea, you are never, ever just looking out for number one. So how do you keep yourself safe? Well, you start with your PPE, or personal protective equipment. And look, this is not a friendly suggestion, it's the absolute law of the ship. Picture yourself going into the engine room. It's incredibly loud, it's hot, it's dangerous. You'd better be wearing your boiler suit, helmet, safety shoes, gloves, and absolutely critically, your earmuffs. This stuff is your armor. Okay, so that brings up a fun question. While you have to wear all this special gear, there are also some super common, everyday things that you are absolutely forbidden from wearing while on duty. Any ideas what they could be? Yeah, things like jewelry, baggy clothes, even stuff like a sweat rag tied around your neck or a necktie. All of it is a huge no-go. And the reason why is simple. And honestly, it's terrifying. Machinery. Anything that can dangle or snag can pull a person into moving equipment in the blink of an eye. What's totally normal on land can get you killed at sea. All right, so now let's build on that. We've got the individual covered, but what about the team? A ship is basically a small floating town, totally isolated, often with a crew from a dozen different countries who all speak different languages. Here, teamwork isn't just about getting the job done, it is literally about survival. So, let me ask you this. On a modern ship packed with all kinds of advanced gadgets, what do you think is the single best way to prevent accidents? Is it more automation? A tougher captain? What do you think? Well, the answer couldn't be clearer. It's all about following procedures and having effective communication. It's not about blindly trusting technology, because tech can and does fail. And it's not about having some boss who doesn't listen. It's about every single person knowing the plan, feeling they can speak up, and, just as importantly, listening to each other. That is the bedrock of a safe ship. And this quote right here is such a perfect, practical example of that. Imagine you're in a noisy engine room, trying to give an order to a crewmate whose first language isn't English. Just yelling at them is useless. The right way, the safe way, is to have them repeat the order back to you in their own words. It's called closed-loop communication, and it's a simple trick that makes sure nothing gets lost in translation, preventing some really horrible mistakes.
Okay, we've talked personal safety, we've talked teamwork. But what happens when, after all that, something goes terribly, terribly wrong? A fire breaks out, a collision, a person falls overboard. This is the sound that every seafarer hopes they never have to hear for real, but they all have to know it by heart. 7 short blasts on the ship's horn, followed by 1 long one. That is the general emergency alarm. And when you hear it, it means drop everything you are doing because your life might be on the line.
And the moment that alarm goes off, there is zero time for confusion. The procedure is drilled into you. 1, you hear the alarm. 2, you already know your specific job because you've checked the muster list. That's a big chart that tells every person on the crew exactly what to do, whether it's fighting the fire or getting a lifeboat ready. And 3, you go immediately to your muster station to meet up with your team. No hesitation. Now let's switch gears to a different kind of emergency, one that's totally silent and invisible. It all starts with this number, 21%. What in the world could that be? Well, it's the percentage of oxygen in the air that you and I are breathing right now. And that number perfectly highlights the danger of what are called enclosed spaces on a ship. Think of a giant, unventilated cargo hold or a ballast tank. In places like that, oxygen levels can plummet and poisonous gases can build up. If that number drops below 21%, you can become disoriented, and it can kill you. That's why no one, and I mean no one, is allowed to enter one of those spaces without a strict permit, and only after the air has been tested and certified as safe.
So far, we've been focused on keeping the people and the ship safe. But now, let's pull the camera way back. Every single one of these massive vessels leaves a footprint, and they have a huge responsibility to protect the oceans they sail through.
You know, these big regulations don't just appear out of thin air. So often they are written in the aftermath of a disaster. The perfect example is the Exxon Valdez oil spill back in 1989. That one single catastrophic event pushed the United States to pass the Oil Pollution Act of 1990. And among other things, it required that all oil tankers in U.S. waters had to be built with a double hull to add an extra layer of protection.
The big international treaty that governs all of this is called MARPOL, and it's broken down into different sections called annexes, with each one tackling a specific kind of pollution. Annex 1 is all about oil. Annex 3 covers harmful stuff that's in packages. Annex 4 handles sewage. V is for garbage, with super strict rules about what can go overboard. And Annex 6 is all about air pollution coming from the ship's engine. It's a massive rulebook for keeping a ship's impact as small as possible. So we've looked at the gear, the teamwork, the emergency drills, the environmental rules, but all of these things, they all point to one final overarching theme, the one variable that connects everything we've talked about. Just think about it for a second. We've got double-hulled tankers, we've got GPS, we've got volumes and volumes of regulations, and yet accidents still happen. So what's the real reason? What's the root cause of most of them? Is it the equipment failing? Is it just bad luck with the weather?
Well, according to study after study, the answer is just two words: human error. But here's the thing. Human error isn't just about someone being clumsy and making one little mistake. It's actually a catch-all term for much deeper problems. We're talking about fatigue from being dangerously overworked, the incredible mental stress of being thousands of miles from your family, the communication problems we already talked about, or a poor safety culture where people are too scared to speak up. And yeah, of course, being impaired by alcohol or drugs. All of that gets bundled into human error. And all of this leaves us with one last big question to think about. The entire maritime world is built on a foundation of procedures, checklists, and regulations. But if human error is still the biggest problem, are all those rules really enough? Or, at the end of the day, is true safety at sea less about the rulebook you're told to follow and more about the culture you and your crewmates choose to build?